So in this video, we will going to discuss how to start developing web application or any other Android app or any other application if you are planning to start developing, right? तो कहाँ से start करना है? तो जब आप start करेंगे, right? तो there is a some consideration कि आप क्या बना रहे हैं, right? So what are you developing it? So are you developing a product, right? Right? So or are you developing, right, any application based on the client's requirement, right? Based on client requirement, or are you uh, launching, right? You can say a startup based on idea, correct? So when you are thinking about that different, so these considerations, so if you are developing a product, that will be also based on the requirement, right? So you already having a some requirement. Let's say simple example, you are planning to develop one of the host to host solution for your banking app, especially for a corporate banking. So you already know I need to transfer some files. That is one of that you can say requirement. Or let's say if you are developing one of the UPI app as of now, this API UPI app you are developing into your Android, right? And there you are integrating to some other APIs, correct? So in that scenario, first thing is based on your application requirement and based on your business scenario. If you have, you can say database requirement, right? Then you also need to develop your database because you are persisting some data into a database, right? So one thing here, correct? Another thing is that do you have any other UI in your, do you have UI part also in your application, right? Then or it is a just you can say middleware application. Middleware application means it's a just you can say in giving a interfacing to some other application and other side also it is a some interfacing here, right? That is called as a middleware applications, right? So some people are also providing a middleware applications. So it depends on the application to application, right? So when you have, if you wanted to store any data to a database, right? So what we do, we follow the SDLC life cycle, right? Correct. If you are talking about agile also, right? SDLC life cycle here. So in that scenario, we collect the requirement, right? Requirement gathering, right? Then we do what we can say, right? Apart from requirement, you do analysis, right? Then what you are saying is after that you after doing some analysis, is this doable or not doable, then you do some prepare some documents. So generally this analysis is done by your BAs, right? So if your team has a BAs or maybe the person who has a good understanding for your business, that person will do the analysis and prepare some document so that you can be, so everything in your mind, whatever you are listening, you are collecting the information, you are document, and this document it will be into well structured into a use cases, correct? Then for each use cases, what you do a planning, correct? So this particular use case will take some time, and this planning we will do how we will release and what are the things we'll consider, and there will be a time estimation, right? Time consideration, correct? Then also you will have a, you can say design, then coding, right? And then you will have a, after coding, you can say testing, and then you will have a release. That is a standard way we do. If you will follow agile also, that is also we do the same thing, and there will be a multiple round of testing, right? So in UAT, SIT, QAT, multiple phases we do there. So once you gather the requirement, so let's say if you have any product and you have some already you have a requirement and you wanted to develop the product, so you know that what is the problem, you are fixing it. So you have some requirement. Based on the requirement, you do some analysis and then you prepare some kind of documents, and based on that you will do some planning ki how much thing I will do it and release, right? How many developers we need it. We also do the time estimation, how many people I need it, correct? And that main hours we will say 8 hours per day that one particular developer will put it, how many number of hours we required it. So you will have a time consideration and you will estimate the time and you will do the design, right? So there will be a same design consideration, and design time also is there into a time consideration. Ki this much time you need to have for preparing an infrastructure, time is required for designing the application, time is required for coding, time is required for testing, and then there will be a final release, correct? So this is the thing you need to do it, right? If you are working on client requirement, so there will be multiple round of discussion to collect the requirements. So you do some analysis, then you will give that, okay, this requirement is doable or not doable, or how you will do it. Then you will do a planning and you do the time estimation, design, coding, testing, and release, correct? That's the way we follow. If you have a startup also, you will, if you will do a structured way, this is the particularly proper life cycle. If you will follow, that will be much better. Either you are going with the waterfall model or you are going with the agile model. Both the ways you, it is okay here, correct? So if you are developing a middleware, in the middleware also you need to have some requirement. What will be the API you are developing, or how you are integrating or interfacing here, how you are giving the details to some other application. As an example, middleware application, there is a one product which is helping it to you for some of the UI application at the, and also sending a details to some other core banking system into a banking. So in that scenario, it is a middleware application, doesn't have any UI, but it is taking some details and sending that details to some other application, right? So middle part, it is something you can say, or making say middleman, right? Which is taking that some data or some other requirements or something from that UI or some other application and sending to some other application like this. So you can have a middleware applications, right? So this way, and there are some people are creating a frameworks like Apache Camel, or maybe there is a many other frameworks which is Apache as a freeware, but there are some like a Mule like this. So in the framework also people are creating and giving an APIs, right? To support some of that, you can say particular features. So based on that, so they have created some framework, right? So you can also say these frameworks are nothing but type of a product only. So in that scenario, there is in that framework also there is a no UI, but there is a documentation. So based on the documentation, for a particular scenario, for a particular purpose, or for a particular requirement, you have developed that particular framework. That framework you can use it in your code here, correct? And in that framework also there is a no such database also, right? It is just for APIs or maybe for performing some operations or whatever it is, correct? Like that, correct? So that's the way you can start developing it. So if you have any database, right? So you need to have a fair understanding of the domain knowledge, and there is a consideration. So let's say simple web application and school management application you wanted to develop it, right? So not, we are not making too much complex as of now. So school management application, you know that you already got some requirement for one of the leading school, let's say. In that scenario, and we are not talking about monolithic or microservice architecture. Let's say it's a simple monolithic application as of now. So school management, if you are talking about, if you have already collected some requirement and you have documented, now you are talking about into design phase, right? So if you are into design phase, now how you will start catering for each and every use case, correct? So let's say for login of the teachers or login of any particular, so login module you wanted to develop. So there is a login module. Simple example we are taking about login module, right? So login module, if you are developing, and let's say take it an example, we are not using any other third party or OR2 kind of authentication. We are not using. We are using a simple login and authentication from the database only. So there is a two things you can use it. So one thing is that top-down approach and bottom-up, right? So top-down is, so in some certain companies, people create the prototype of a UI, right? So you can do, you can create, right? prototype, right? And simple API. So prototype first, then later is the APIs, right? So maybe you APIs means what is that input output parameters into each particular API in the methods, and what will be the protocol, right? So like this, you will create some APIs which is receiving a request and sending that response here, right? And or before that, you can create a prototype how your page will be looks like, and there will be some dummy data, right? So when you log in, when you will go to next page, how the next page will be looks like. Then so like this, you can just create a prototype. Then you can have a multi-bullet. So prototype is not come under the design. Design will come start from your API development and from the API. So you will create a simple APIs where you will just specify that what is the methods, what will be the class name in the method, input, output parameters, and these many parameters, right? So if you will say login, you will take a user ID and password, and it will be giving that, let's say the string parameter, it is a successful, or it is not successful, it will give a error message saying that you need to create this email ID and password is not valid. Like this simple one method we are talking about. So you have created an API, but there is a no logic. Correct. So at this scenario, you have created a API first, then you create a business service, and then you will create a database DAO layer, and then you can create a database, right? Another approach is, right? Another approach is when we are talking about, uh, you create a database first, right? So database first, in that scenario, you discuss and sit with your, what we can call as your BAs. And based on your requirement, you create the entire database and relationship, find out the entities and relationship, and do some normalizations, and you create, and your database is ready, right? And still I'm telling you that we are not considering any microservice architecture. We are considering more simple monolithic application, because then you need to think about many more multiple databases or single database and many more other consideration. But here monolithic simple school management application. So you will find out, let's say database. In this database, what you do, you will create a database name, let's say school management, right? In school management, what you do, then what are the entities, right? And then what are the attributes of an attribute, right? So attributes, in these attributes, because these are nothing but your properties, right? These attributes will be converted into a table columns, or entity will be converted into a tables, right? Like this, you will specify the relationship, right? Nothing but you are basically creating an ER model. And this ER model is basically converted into your entire database. So you know that if I will perform login, so the data will be going into which particular table and how you will validate it, right? So this is nothing but your bottom up approach. So like this, you can use both the approaches and you can do it. In your API development, here you can also look for, and you can use that TDD, test driven development, right? So test driven development, what you are doing it, you are not writing anything, but you are start creating a test cases and start testing your APIs when you are going with some dummy data, right? So test driven development is coming when we are developing that simple APIs without writing any such kind of a logic and everything here. So this way you can use that, right? So you can have a prototype and then API, and then you can use like this, or maybe you can create a database first, right? So because database is a core plane and it's the base of your application, so it will be better to create. So my idea is, if you can go ahead with the creating a database first, and then you will use creating an API, it will be much more feasible. That's my opinion, right? But that is also, you can consider case by case timelines and kind of a task and assignments and so many things, right? So like this, you can use these approaches, right? And try, and you can let me know that which is you find very much suitable here. Correct.